And this is college physics. And today I'm mostly just going to be going through the syllabus, the structure of the class, and then once I'm done with that, I'm going to go through a little stuff to try to make sure that everybody's in the right place, that there wouldn't be a better class for you to take or whatever. And then I guess we'll start with the calculations and stuff on Thursday. So first I'm going to go through the syllabus. In order to get to the syllabus, you need to go to D2L. I assume most people here have had classes here before and you've used D2L. But if you haven't used D2L before, if you're new to Normandale or whatever, it's going to be an important thing in this class. So if you don't know how to log in, you might want to come talk to me after class and I can point you towards the IT services or something. All right, so to get to D2L, go to the Normandale homepage, and then up at the top right is a link to D2L. Click on that, and you'll need to know your star ID and your password to get in, or someone else's. But that's not, don't do that though. And I assume you'll come to, they sort of changed the format of this recently a little bit, but I assume you'll see something that looks sort of like this. This is what mine looks like. And I would guess that somewhere down towards the bottom, it lists all the classes you're taking this semester. These are the classes I'm teaching. And we want college physics. So click on that. And the first thing you see when you go into the college physics main page is a list of announcements. There's only the one welcome announcement so far. But everything that I'm going to, every assignment or handout or whatever that I want you to have in this class, I'm going to put on D2L. And every time I put something new up, I'm going to put an announcement here. So I would say you probably want to get in the habit of just checking D2L maybe every day, once a day. And if there's something new in the announcements, then you know that it's there. And if there's nothing new, then you already have everything. The actual handouts, the syllabus and assignments and everything are going to be in the materials content section. So go up here to materials, go to content. And there are a few things that are already here. Down at the bottom is old lecture notes. Instead of doing my lectures on the whiteboard, I'm going to do my lectures with a stylus on the computer. And you can take notes on that the same way you would with a whiteboard. The benefit of doing it on the computer is when the class is over, I can print out a PDF of all the notes I've taken. And also I'm taking a video as I do this. So when the class is over, usually not till the next day, but say the next day after class, there'll be a video on YouTube that I'll give you a link to where you'll be able to watch everything I'm writing, like you're looking at the board, and hear my voice as I'm doing it. So sort of another way to watch the lecture. It's very helpful if you miss a class. You can just go and watch the lecture on the video. You can even print out the PDF of the notes and then take little notes in the margins of the notes I already took as you watch the lecture. It also can be useful if there's something you just didn't understand and you want to listen to it again. But obviously that, you can't work ahead with the notes from this semester because I haven't said that stuff yet. So that's why down here I have old lecture notes from last semester, and the format of the class is going to be pretty similar to what it was when I did it last year. So on here you can look at PDFs of all the notes. Also on YouTube, videos are available for previous semesters. So let me know if you want a link to the old videos or something. But let me just show you what this looks like. So I'll just go to some random class. August 31st from last year. And you see everything I wrote. You see this guy looking nervously at this buoy out here. And so if you ever want to like work ahead, read ahead or whatever, you can do that through last year's videos and notes. Then there's also problems and solutions. So all of the assignments I'm going to give come from these sets of problems. And I've written out full solutions to every one of these problems, so you can check your work at the end, or if you get stuck working on one, you can get a little hint. So those are the problems. And then the last thing is the course information. That's where the syllabus is. Before I go into the syllabus, there's also campus support services. And Normandale has incredible support services. And this tells you what the hours are, what the room numbers are of all these different things. Tutoring center, makeup testing center, library, on and on. One thing that I want to point out here is disability services. It's called the OSD Office. It stands for Office for Students with Disabilities. And they provide a lot of really useful services for people who have trouble finishing tests on time, or have trouble, like, for example, if you find that you can't concentrate in a room where there's normal like room activity going on, like during a test, they'll provide silent, quiet places for you to take tests. They're really nice to work with. Even if you haven't been diagnosed with a learning disability or something, if you think maybe they have services that would be appropriate for you, you should just go talk to them, and they can help sort that out with you. Okay, and then there's the syllabus. So this is it. I just have one syllabus for all the different lab sections of this class, and that's why there's all this. It's sort of confusing up at the top, but if you find the section that you're in, it tells you where your lecture is. You're the people who don't need to know that because you made it here. The people who need this information are the ones looking around for the class right now. And then the people in this lecture are sections 11, 12, and 13. And this tells you when your lab is. And the room for the lab is just 2 doors down on this hallway. So it should be pretty easy to find. My contact information, my name's Guy O'Lakin. I have a PhD in engineering, sort of engineering math. I'm not a real physicist, but the physics classes I took are like the physics classes you take to study physics, except that I just don't have, so all of this stuff in this class is totally in my background. What isn't in my background is like the really interesting modern physics, what happens if you fly 2 twins apart at the speed of light, and blah, blah, blah. What age do they, that's not in my background. So sorry, I can't answer too many questions about that or about quantum mechanics. But if anybody has questions about that stuff that I can't answer, I'd be happy to point you towards someone in the physics department who can answer those questions. My office is S2302, so the stairs at the end of the hall over there, just right up at the top of the stairs, is my office. But My office hours are in the tutoring center or else in the lab for the lab room for this class. So, most of the time you won't go to my office to talk to me. You'll go to one of these other places. The reasons I do my office hours at these other places is so that you don't have to just come with a specific question and have me answer it and leave. These are in places where there's room for you to sit and work on problems, even if you don't have any questions yet. And then if you get stuck on something, there'll either be other students working on the stuff that you can work through it with, or always I'll be there and you can ask me questions and get the hint that you need or whatever, and then keep going with the assignment. The easiest way to get a hold of me is email. I don't have a phone in my office, but I get the voicemails, so you could leave me a voicemail and I'll call you back. But email is the quickest way to get a hold of me. My phone dings and I write back, no, or whatever, or yes, or I don't know. And if I ever don't get back to you quickly, if I don't get back to you within a day or whatever, just it means that a lot of new emails came in and I forgot about yours. So sorry about that. And just send me another one saying that I forgot to respond, and then I'll feel bad and write to you right away. But don't try doing that. I know you're thinking like, I'm going to just say that I forgot to respond to you the first time, and then skip. No, I'll catch you if you try to do that. My office hours in the tutoring center are Monday and Tuesday from 11 to 12. And then in the lab room, Mondays from 4 to 6 and Wednesdays from 5 to 6. And if it fits into your schedule to just pick a day out of the week or even 2 days out of the week and just show up at office hours that time every week to work on problems and get help if problems come up as you're working through the stuff, I would really recommend that. Excuse me. The students who've done that in the past have always seemed to benefit from it a lot. And there'll probably be other students who are in that same habit of coming to the same office hours you do. So there'll be people that maybe you'll get to know and work on problems with them regularly. So see if that fits into your schedule and think about doing that if you can. The materials for this class, well, before that, anybody have any questions about contact information, office hours? Yes. Those are just sections. So I have 2 different lectures of this class that basically, they do the exact same material. But that's just the night class is all that means. By the way, though, if you ever can't make it to your lab for the week, or you can't make it to an exam that's scheduled, but it turns out you can make it to the one, like to the night class, you can always just show up for exams at the other lecture or show up to lab exams at a different lab that fits your schedule. I don't think we have any problems with space or anything, so you don't have to tell me ahead of time, just show up and I'll give you a test. And that's a good way to take tests that you otherwise would miss, Any other questions? Okay, so the materials that you need for this class, the main thing is there's no required textbook for this class. I have recommended textbooks, and mostly, I think those are useful as future resources. If you're planning to keep doing physics after this class is over. One is what I would assign as the textbook if I had a required textbook for this class. That's Physics by Giancoli. And then I always recommend Sham's outlines. Textbooks are super expensive. Even if you bought an old edition of that Giancoli textbook, it would probably be close to $100 or something. The Sham's outline for college physics probably costs $15 or $20. It's paperback. It gives real concise descriptions of the topics. designed for people who've already taken a class in it just to sort of jog their memory. And it has a ton of problems with all the answers in the back and complete solutions for a lot of the problems. So it's a really good resource for people who, like, there are probably some people in class here who are taking this to apply to medical school. If you're applying to medical school, you're going to have to take the MCAT, which has a physics section in it, and so you're going to want to go back and refresh your memory on this stuff. And that the Sham's outline on college physics would be a really good way to get ready for an MCAT or something. As far as that textbook, a lot of times in the past, I've had people come talk to me about, like, they're having trouble with the class. Can I recommend a good outside resource? And really, my experience has been this. Your best chance to do well in this class is to not look at anything except the notes and the stuff I say in class, and work through the problems. I'm trying really hard to boil down this information into a small enough package that I can just fit it into the lectures that gives you everything you know to be ready for the exams. I'm trying to lead your thought process towards the kind of questions I'm going to ask on exams. And I really think the simplest way to make sense out of the exams and do well, get a good grade in this class is just to pay attention to what I say, and read and reread the notes and work through the problems. And so I would actually not recommend using either of these two reference books while you're taking this class. I mean, if you have a special interest in it, that's fine, but I don't think it'll help you do better in this class. I think you're better off spending that time grade-wise in this class just using my notes and doing the problems. So that means that the one thing you need for this class is a scientific calculator. It needs to have trigonometric functions. So it needs to do sine and cosine. If you have a calculator that doesn't do those, it just does arithmetic, talk to me. We have calculators we can loan out or whatever. And any calculator is fine with me. So if you have a high-powered graphing calculator, feel free to use those on tests in this class. The website for this class is D2L. That was what we came into to look at the syllabus. And then there's a list of topics that we're going to cover. I'm not going to go into that now because these words probably won't make a ton of sense really yet. But basically, Physics 1, this Physics 1 class and almost any Physics 1 class anywhere has to do with motions of objects that are roughly on the same roughly the same size as we are, stuff that you can see and feel. And, if you throw a ball with this velocity at this angle, where's it going to land? What's going to happen if it bumps into another ball? Where are they going to go? That kind of stuff. Stuff that you have some experience with from just playing around with things around you. In one way that makes this class kind of simpler because you actually have intuition. It's not entirely a mathematical exercise. You sort of have an idea of what's going to happen. In a lot of cases, though, that intuition, stuff that you feel like happens, it turns out for almost everyone, your intuition is wrong about that. And so that, in some cases, makes this class kind of tricky because not only do you have to learn how this stuff happens, you also have to scrub your mind of some stuff that you've believed happens for the last 20 years of your life or whatever. You have to get rid of those preconceived ideas and then replace it with the real stuff. And so I'm going to try very hard to emphasize what are the areas where people generally have misconceptions. This is what, and say, like, explain what are the things that you have to disregard, stop thinking, and what are the things that really happen. So that's what this class is about. And then for the people who take Physics 2 in the spring, Physics 2 tends to be almost entirely electricity and magnetism. So that's stuff you can't really see and feel as easily. Anybody have any questions about the topics in this class? Yeah. No, I don't. I suppose if you want to see when I'll cover what, probably the best guess is when I covered what last year. So if you look at those old notes, you can see where the new header comes up or whatever. That's probably the best way to do that. But students ask questions at different times, and so things stretch out or shorten based on how many extra problems people want me to do and stuff. So I don't try to have it broken down day to day or anything. Any other questions about the topics? Then the grading for this class. The grade cutoffs are going to most likely be 92, 82, 70, 60. They won't be any higher than that. If people's scores are lower than I expect, then I might curve it a little to bring the grades up. And I think when people look at that, most people think like that's a hard grading scale. I just want to point out, I've chosen that grading scale because the way that it's made sense for me to teach this class and do the exams, putting the grade cutoffs at those points seems to give me about the distribution of grades that I want. I think, if anything, I probably have more people getting A's and B's than most college physics classes. So I don't think you'll find that it's like especially hard to get an A or a B or anything. That's more a reflection of the way that I teach this class and the way my exams are structured and stuff, I think. The final grade is going to be broken down into 70% exams, 20% lecture quizzes, and 10% lab exams. And I'll go into details about what all of those things are in a second. But the one thing that I think I should bring up when you look at how the grade is broken down is that every one of those things is some form of in-class test. So none of your grade is based on projects or directly based on homework or anything like that. And I know that format makes some people nervous if you feel like you have some test anxiety and or you feel like you regularly do better on homework assignments than you do on exams or whatever. I will say that I think I do two things on my exams that are going to make that less of a problem than it sometimes is. The first one of those two things is the questions that are going to be on the exams are going to be very similar in thought process and structure to the problems that I'm going to assign to you to do. So if you've done all the work that I've asked you to do, I think you'll find when you see the exams, you'll look at the problem and say like, okay, right off the bat, you'll know I basically go through this set of steps to do it. You will have done problems like that. I'm not going to give you questions that are totally off the wall compared to the way I've asked you to think about it in the past. And the second thing that I think will help is that I always make an effort to make the exams pretty short for the amount of time that's given. The way I try to think about it, so this class is 80 minutes long. I write these exams with the intention that half of the class will have handed in their exam and left within an hour of, after an hour of the test. which means that after an hour, only half of the class is still going to be here working on stuff. And those people still have like 20 or 25 minutes to work on it. And when I think about it that way, I think it's the case that you're not going to really ever feel time pressure. You're not going to be like looking at the clock like, oh no, I got to finish this so I can get to the next one before I run out of time. I think you'll feel like you have plenty of time to do it if you've done the problems. And so I think, in my experience from talking to people, and I've been teaching this class here for 10 years now, I think you'll find that it's not a very high stress exam compared to some environments you've been in. But if you have concerns about the format of the class, come talk to me, and we can, I'm not going to change the way I do the grades, but maybe there is something that can be done by the OSD office, or maybe there are some study strategies I can help you with that might make it better. I don't know. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the individual things that make up the grade. The first thing I want to talk about are the practice problems, and those don't show up in the grade directly, but indirectly, the practice problems are what you have to do to get ready for the exams. The list of practice problems that I showed you before I went into the syllabus are designed to be similar in format, similar in thought process to the questions that are going to be on the tests. In the announcements on D2L, every day I'm going to tell you what problems I want you to work on. You're not going to turn them in, so you don't have to do it. You don't have to do a single problem this whole semester. But if you don't do the problems that I assign, it's going to have a big effect on your grade, And if you do a third of the problems I assign, the exams are going to go horribly, So I want you to think of the problems I assign as like crucial test preparation. If there's one way I would describe this class, it's like one sort of simple way to describe this class. I'd say there's maybe 100 total problems that you'll do over the course of this class. And how well you do in this class is just going to come down to how well you understand the thought process for those 100 problems. When I assign these problems, I'm going to assign each one of them twice during the semester. That's sort of an unusual approach, I think, but I've been pretty happy with how it's worked when I've done it in the past. So like we'll go into a topic and I'll assign problems 1 through 11 related to that topic. Okay. Then 2 weeks after that, we'll have moved on to new topics, but I'm going to reassign problems, the even problems of those. So you'll have to go back and redo these problems 2 through 10 even. And then 2 weeks after that, you'll have to go back and do the odd problems, 1 through 11 odd. And the idea of that is that it's just constantly making you go back and think back over topics that are in the past. All the exams are cumulative in this class, so you need to somehow be going back and refreshing your memory on the old stuff. And I think if you follow, do these problems when I assign them, I think you'll find it works pretty well. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So it's gonna start out with fewer problems, and then 2 weeks later, it's gonna be ramp up a little bit, and 2 weeks later it'll ramp up a little bit, and then that'll be the steady amount for the semester. It's all like it's a final. Yeah, well, somewhere in between maybe is a better answer, actually. There always will be at least one problem on any new section. You know what I mean? And then maybe the other half of the test will be like old stuff. Yeah, sure. So the exams, they make up 70% of the grade. There are 5 of them total, and they're each worth the same amount. So each one is worth 14% of your grade. And like I said, each one of those exams is cumulative. And the way exam 5 works is, so you'll take this last one, which works as sort of like a final, and whatever you get on that exam, it'll count as your grade for exam 5, but it'll also replace the lowest score of the first 4, unless it's lower than all of them, and then they'll stay. You know, it won't lower any grades. But so if you got 90, 95, 20 on exam 3, you know, something happened, you know, you didn't have a chance to work on anything, then you get 80, 90, you get that 90 on exam 5. In your final grade, it'll say your exam 5 score is 90, and it'll say your exam 3 score is also 90, because that 90 from your last exam will replace the 20 you got when you didn't have the chance to study. So that's sort of like a mulligan. You know, you have one chance to for things to go badly, and it still doesn't have to affect your grade at all. That policy also is the only way that the course is structured for makeup exams. So if you miss exam 3, then your exam 5 score counts as itself, and it replaces a 0 that you got on exam 3. And then if you had another one of the 4 first exams that didn't go very well, you don't have that chance to replace one of those anymore. You know, so that's the only makeup policy that I have. Although if you know you have to miss a test, look at the schedule. You know, come talk to me as soon as you can. Maybe we can, you know, make an exception for that. I'm not drawing a real hard line about that, but the idea is if you miss one exam, your exam 5 score fills that gap, and that means that if you miss 2 exams and we haven't agreed on something beforehand, one of those is going to come into your grade as a 0, and you don't want that. Any questions about exams? Here's the full schedule. Yes? It's in the class. And I should say again, if you look at this schedule and you're like, oh no, I can't make the exam on Tuesday, October 30th, check your schedule and see if you can make it to the night class on Monday, October 29th. If you can do that, then there's no problem. Just come to the night class instead, take the test there. It's not the exact same test, but it covers the same topics. And then I'll just grade that instead, no problem. Any other questions about the test? When I know that information is available, but I don't know yet, but I'll look it up. Any other questions? Okay. Then the lecture quizzes are worth 20% of your grade. That 20% is broken up into 7 separate quizzes. The dates for all those quizzes are given, and these quizzes are going to be just given to you in the last 15 or so minutes of the class. The exams are all problem solving. So every question on an exam is going to be similar to problems that you've done in the homework, the assigned problems. The lecture quizzes are different. The lecture quizzes are just short answer questions asking you about stuff I said in lecture. So to do well on these, it's not about going through the problems, it's about reading and rereading the lecture notes. Okay, I want you to remember the stuff I said. I dropped the lowest one of these quizzes, so mainly that means if you miss one of these quizzes, that 0 doesn't have to affect your grade. And each individual quiz is not a real big part of your grade. If you drop one of these 7, you're left with 6 quizzes making up 20% of your grade, so each one is worth 3 1/3% of your score. But if you miss a bunch of them, they obviously add up. And I do these lecture quizzes as part of the grade because, I don't have a textbook in this class. Most often in a class like this, the material that we cover would be spread out over, say, 200 pages of a textbook or something. And little by little, you'd be asked to read these 200 pages over the semester. And that's a lot of reading that I'm not asking you to do. What I want you to do instead is, I feel like I've made the effort to boil down those 200 pages into a select amount of information that I'm expecting you to know. And that gives you extra time to look over and, reread that boiled down Cliff Notes version of this material. And so I think it's reasonable to expect you to remember it pretty well. And so that's what these quizzes are about. And notice that these quizzes are also cumulative. So it's not just the stuff that you studied since the last quiz. You need to be refreshing your memory on old material too. And like I'm doing with the problems, I'll as a daily assignment, I'll give you stuff to read, notes to read, and I'll give you assignments to do. And those notes, I'll have you every once in a while go back over the old stuff. So hopefully that'll sort of guide you towards having a pretty good memory of the early stuff as well as the new stuff. Yeah. So you said that. Does this mean we're mostly yeah, it's no, it's not. It's definitely not just like memorizing formulas. I'm going to give you all the formulas you need on the test. Yeah, it's sort of it's a mix of. I think maybe the trickiest thing about physics is it's kind of like a mix of physical thinking with doing careful math, and how to blend those two things together is sort of the challenging thing. So that's what it'll be. Any other questions about the quizzes? Okay, and then the last 10% of the grade is on lab exams. My labs are designed to work on your physical intuition of what's happening. So, for example, we'll be working on stuff like, okay, something's flying through the air. As it gets to this point, so it's right here. Could you forget about the formulas for a second? Could you point in the direction of the velocity of that object? Could you point in the direction of the acceleration of that object? If it hits something else, could you draw the directions of the forces that object feels, the other object feels? That intuition somewhat is related to the mathematical calculations, but I think you can sort of develop those independently, and then they sort of reinforce each other. So the labs are where we're going to work on that intuition. And the lab exams are going to ask you to sort of recreate problems, redo problems that are similar to the problems I ask you to do in the labs. There's 3 lab exams. Each one is only worth 3 1/3% of your grade, so it's not very high stakes. But the dates of the lab exams are given there, and they'll take place in your lab section on those weeks. Since each one of those is only worth 3 1/3% of your grade, I'm not doing any makeups. But remember, if you can't make it to your lab section the day of the lab exam, or if you just miss it, you miss the bus or whatever, something goes, you're super sick, you can't make it. Well, if you're super sick, talk to me. Maybe we can work something out on that. But remember that there's also all these other lab sections. And so if you can make it to any of the 4 other lab sections that week, you can just take the lab exam there. Again, it's not an exact copy of the one that your class took, but it's similar material, and I'll just give you that one, grade that one, and that'll be your lab exam score. So that's easy. Any questions about the lab exams? Okay, and then labs, I will take attendance. So you have to be at the labs. You can miss 2 of them and still pass the class. If you miss a 3rd one, you don't pass the class. So that's a pretty abrupt drop off. So don't do that. If you miss a lab, the sheets that we're working on in the labs are going to be posted on D2L, so you can just print that out, and then come talk to me or talk to your lab partners or something about how to do things that don't make sense to you. But yeah, basically, you can miss 2 of them. I wouldn't like try to play the game of missing as many as you can, because you never know what's going to happen. But that's about all I have to say about that, I guess. Yes. Nope. Just points on the only grade associated with the labs, assuming that you didn't miss too many, has to do with the lab exams. You're just trying to understand those. At each lab, you're just trying to understand the concepts and how to think through these problems well enough that you can do similar things on the lab exam. Yes? No. I mean, I think it's a good idea, but I'm not never check them or anything. And you definitely don't have to keep a careful lab notebook. I mean, just any old notebook with notes jotted down in it is fine, spiral notebook or whatever. It doesn't have to follow all the rules of lab notebooks, Yeah, right. Yes. No, I'm not doing any pre-labs of any kind. We'll do everything you need in the lab section. Any other questions? Okay. Cheating, the only way cheating can come up in a class like this is copying the work of the person next to you on a test. That comes up every once in a while. This is a really full class, and I mean, I know sometimes it's just your eyes just sort of wander or whatever. You're curious about how far someone else has gotten on a test or whatever, but try really hard to just keep your eyes on your own paper. Let's just not go down that road. I would be so appreciative if we didn't have to deal with that. General policies and comments. I don't take attendance for the lecture. So if you ever can't make it to lecture, it's really not a big deal. That video is going to be available on YouTube. The notes are going to be available on D2L. I've had people get A's in the class without ever coming to class except to take the quizzes. For most people, that wouldn't work very well, but if you can make it work for yourself, feel free. I don't have any hard feelings about that, And sort of related to that, I'd say if you're not in a place where you can concentrate on a given day, there's no reason to come here and just sort of mindlessly copy down notes. I remember doing that in college, just sort of spacing out and thinking about oh, what are we going to do later today, and all I'm doing is taking notes. There's no reason to do that. The notes are already available. So if you can't concentrate or whatever, feel free to just not come. Just be sure that you watch the video and take notes on it later when you're in a better headspace, all the material that you need for this class is available on D2L, and also maybe related to having a crowded classroom. Try not to get frustrated with each other. Just take a deep breath. Definitely don't be rude to me. I hate that. I'm the one who grades you. Canceled class number. I mean, if I have to cancel a class, I'm always going to put it on D2L, so you can just look on the D2L announcements too, but you can call that number and find out what classes have been canceled. And then down at the bottom, there's another little thing about the OSD Office, which I think is just such a great service, and they do such a good job. So if you even think there's a possibility that they might be able to help you, I would go talk to them. Any questions about the class overall? Yes. Mm-hmm. I would say they probably take an hour. Wait, longer than that. It's a 2-hour lab. I would say they take an hour and 20 minutes, something like that. Some people are always there at the end, but like the median person probably takes an hour, 20 minutes on average, something like that. Yes. Yeah. No, I'm always gonna whatever I have to say about the labs, I'll say in the labs. Um, there's nothing to prepare. But what the lab is going to be this week is I do a pre-test and a post-test of sort of a check on like your physics intuition. It doesn't count your grade at all. It's just sort of a way for us to see how well we're getting these ideas across. Besides, since most of the class is sort of focused on mathematical problem solving, we want to make sure that we're getting this sort of physics intuition in there too. And so the pre-test, most of the people in here have never taken physics. People aren't going to score very well, and some of the questions you won't even really have a real good idea what they're asking, and that's just how it sort of has to be. And then the post-test, hopefully the scores will go up quite a bit. Yes. No. Yeah, most people have never taken physics, and that's sort of what the level, like the way I'm trying to present this stuff to people who've never had it. Any other questions? So now I want to talk a little bit about, like what kind of people should, like, what are the reasons that people should take this class? How do you know if you're in the right class? So I'm going to say something about that, and then I'm going to write up a few math questions for you to work on. The math questions are just sort of at the level of the kind of math problems you'll have to do in this class. I'm not expecting everyone to be able to, I would say less than half of the class will be able to do all 5 of them. But I want you to I think you should have kind of a vague idea of where to go to solve these problems, kind of remember having done it, be able to make some progress on all of these and solve a couple of them, that sort of thing. When we get to this math quiz, if you go through it and you're just like, that didn't make any sense to me. I had no idea how to do any of it. I'm not even sure if I had that stuff. Then we should just definitely talk about this class. Maybe, there's still a good chance if you have to that you might be able to get through this class, but it's going to make it a lot harder and there might be a better class for you to take. First, here's my thoughts on taking this class. So you should take this class if So first, if you're planning to major in something, so let's say you're majoring in or applying for an area where college physics is required. Okay, that's sort of a no-brainer. Like if it's required, you got to take it. The second reason you should take this class is you don't know exactly what you want to study yet, but you think you might be going into an area where this class would be required. If you're thinking of majoring in any sciences, or if you think you're possibly going to apply to some kind of professional school that's going to require this, then that's a good reason to take it. And if neither of these apply, there's really only one other reason that you should take this class, in my opinion, and that is that you like mathematical topics and you feel fairly comfortable in mathematical classes. You know, you feel fairly good in mathematical classes. If you're not planning on doing a major that requires this and you don't have any particular interest, or you don't feel that comfortable in math classes and you're just taking this class because you need to fulfill a science requirement, then I would not recommend taking this class. There are 3 levels of physics that we teach at Normandale, all just based on what the mathematical prerequisite is. This is the middle one of those, the middle level of those 3. And so the other options, if these 3 criteria don't apply, one is called Physics for Future Presidents, I think. For good future presidents, I think is implied. And the idea there is it's not as the mathematical prerequisite is lower. It's not covered in as much mathematical detail. It talks about some of the sort of physics ideas that are important for policy decisions, like global warming type stuff, power, And then we also teach observational astronomy. Okay, so that's my recommendation. If none of these 3 hold, I think one of these 2 classes you'd be happier in the class, you'd be happier with the level of, the way that the class is taught. It would just go better all around. And then the last thing I want to say is if there's anyone in here who is thinking of majoring in engineering, this class will not count as a physics credit in an engineering curriculum. So if you're considering any kind of engineering, you need to take the calculus-based physics. And so I know there have been students that I've had that started in my college physics class, and they took that just to get sort of an idea of the overall ideas in physics. And then after that, they took calc-based physics, and then went on and got engineering degrees, and now they've graduated and everything. And that's a perfectly fine way to go, but I just want to make sure anyone who's thinking of majoring in engineering isn't thinking they're getting engineering physics credit for this class, because that would be a very sad thing to learn later, you know. Anyone have any questions about that? All right, so here's the last thing I want to do. Math quiz. So I just want to write up these 5 questions and see how far you can get on these 5 questions. You can spend the rest of the class period doing it. I'll start next class period by just going through how to do these, because the suspense will be killing you by then. And, you know, each one of these 5 kinds of problems is something that you'll have to do at some point in this class. So they should look more or less familiar. You should be able to make some progress on them, maybe be able to get all the way through a couple of them. That's sort of where I expect most people to be. But if all of these look totally foreign to you, we just need to talk. Okay. Let's not. Yeah. Okay, so the first one is graph the function or plot the function y equals x squared. The second one is calculate the slope of the line. Between the points 1, 2, so those are coordinates defining a point, and the point 4, 3. The third one is simplify the expression a times b squared times c squared over b to the 4th times a times the square root of c. So this one, you're not going to get a numeric answer for this. You're going to get an answer in terms of a, b, and c. It's just going to, you're just going to be able to cancel some of this stuff out. Number 4, solve this expression for a. We have a squared times b times c is equal to 4c plus b squared c squared. And again, you won't be able to come up with a number answer for this. You're going to have a expressed in terms of the variables b and c. And then the last one is to solve a system of equations so x1 plus x2 is equal to 50 is the first equation, and the second equation, it says 2x1 minus 3x2 is equal to negative 10. And so for this one, you are trying to come up with numbers, you know, x1 is equal to one number, x2 is equal to another number. Okay, so you can take the rest of class to see if you can make some progress on these. Feel free to talk to the person next to you or whatever if you want a hint or whatever. And you can go whenever you're ready, and then I'll go through this at the start of the next class. Okay?